Good.
Ready to go.
Well, welcome everybody to the August meeting of the LCTC System Board of Supervisors Audit Committee. Thanks for joining us today. I want to remind you that the Audit Committee meeting is being live streamed to all of our fans. So,
Good morning. I'd like to call the August 2026 LCTC System Board of Supervisors Audit Committee meeting to order. As chair of the Audit Committee, I appoint Supervisor Day to serve as a temporary member of the Audit Committee for the purpose of today's meeting. I will ask Supervisor Hall to lead us in the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Poole, can I ask you to conduct a roll call to establish?
Yes, ma'am. I would be happy to do so. Chair Hogan
Here.
is present. Supervisor Hall
Here.
Is present. Supervisor McConduit is absent. Supervisor Leday is present. At this time, Chair, we do have a quorum.
Has there been any request, Ms. Poole, for public comment related to one of the enumerated agenda items on today's meeting agenda? This is a reminder that public comment must be related to a specific agenda item.
No, ma'am, we do not have public comments.
I will now ask for a motion to approve the April 8th, 2026 meeting minutes.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Hall, seconded by Supervisor Kelly. Well, wait, seconded by Supervisor Leday.
Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries. I will now invite Jeff Lemon to review the internal audit yearly report for fiscal year 2025 through 2026.
Thank you, Supervisor. I appreciate everybody being here. Let's jump right into it. I kind of want to start with a snapshot of what we did in the past fiscal year. The department issued 15 reports. All 12 colleges received some sort of review, some multiple. There was one system-wide review. And during that, in between all of that work, there's a continuous advisory and consulting that we do. We get questions all the time. Can we do this? We did this. Can we get some guidance on where we're going in the future? This type of stuff, I think, has a lot of benefit because we can head stuff up way upstream before it gets to a point. A lot of times, I'll base my risk assessment. If we're getting multiple questions on the same issues, that's a red flag to me and saying, hey, this might be worth looking further into and we can develop a project and go further. So that's kind of the snapshot for fiscal year 25-26. I'll get into some specifics. I want to remind you about the fee reviews that we've been doing. These are the statutory fees that are enacted by legislation. These are your tech fees, your building use fees, academic excellence fees. I think this is important use of our time because these are fees directly charged to the student. It's been a long time for me, but I remember getting those bills and saying, what are we paying these fees for? So I think it's important we're good stewards of this money. We've reviewed 7 of the 12 colleges so far. So we're working our way. Hopefully, next fiscal year, we'll have completed every college. Every college we've been to, we've been able to offer, I think, substantive recommendations that have produced change. And that's what it's all about. If we're working on a project, particular issue, and we're not finding issues, I usually try to pivot and go to another area because our resources are limited. And if the risk isn't there, I try to shift. But with recipient fees, like I said, 7 of the 12 colleges, since we last met in April, we've issued one. I'll get into the specifics. So it's Delgado Community College. Overall, no major issues. Everything looks good. Delgado does a really good job. In their fiscal area, Ron Russo, he's a rock star. Hopefully he's watching. There was one minor issue. They had a T-Mobile charge that exceeded what was approved by their tech fee council. It was about $50,000 or so. The proper thing to be when you have such an overage would be to kick it back to the council and make sure they're okay with that type of increase. But again, not major. We also have one issue where they purchased with tech fee funds. They had a potential FERPA exposure that's the Student Information Act, where the Privacy Act, and even one thing about FERPA, even incidental exposure can result in a finding. It doesn't have to be a total breakdown. So they purchased a printer at one of their satellite campuses. And during our work, we noticed that it was being used for office use and students were using it to copy records. It just seemed like a situation where you ever go to print something or copy something and there's no paper and you just forget about it, you walk away. Well, when somebody puts paper back in there, it's going to print out. So the student leaves their record just hanging around like that. So we recommended that they put some controls in place to prevent any type of FERPA exposure. They did. With every project that we do, I try to make sure I don't just write the finding and say goodbye, have a good day. We try to take it a little further and make sure the corrective action plan is far along before we leave. And that way we can say, hey, that this issue's been closed, or if it's not been closed, we'll give a timeline of when we're going to come back and make sure that the corrective action has taken place. But again, overall, good report. And these are the type of issues we're finding with the restricted fees. There's nothing, we've had, I'm saying major, but we've had some issues that needed immediate correction, but it's mostly stuff like this, just kind of crossing the T's, dotting the I's. And that's why I'm going to carry it forward to fiscal year 26-27, which we'll get into. Next is disaster recovery. Since we last met, we did a review at South Louisiana Community College. Again, I think when we started this a couple of years ago, I was very hesitant to do disaster recovery because it's a beast of a project. But everywhere we've gone, the feedback we got from the college is like, hey, thanks for coming to do this. The analogy I use is you've never been able to clean your house better than when somebody calls and says, hey, we're coming over. It's amazing what you can do. This is kind of, the disaster recovery has kind of been like that. It's like internal audit calls and say, we're going to come look at this. And we send them a list of documents we want to look at. And immediately they're like, oh, we don't have this, we don't have this, we don't have this. But by the time we actually get to review the documents, they've already put in weeks of effort to get them where they need to be. And then there's still some things that we provide feedback on. And with all these disaster recovery projects, like I say, every time here, I don't consider these findings or issues. It's just some colleges are further along in the maturity process on this than others. Some have more unique exposure than others. You're south by 10, you have the hurricane threat. The big thing now is, in my opinion, is the IT threats, cybersecurity. That can happen anywhere, and everything is so reliant on technology now. You lose those systems, it's really hard to deliver to the students. So again, I'm going to carry disaster recovery to the new fiscal year, which I'll get into. We're continuing to do our purchase card and travel card reviews. This is required by the Division of Administration. I do not consider this a high-risk area, but internal audit is required to review each college every 3 years. We see minor issues here, nothing major. There's controls in place on these cards that prevent anything wild. You can't go put a $25,000 hotel suite on a card. A lot of these are capped at $2,000. Some have $5,000 limits. They all require second approval. Most of the things we see are just documentation issues. Somebody's hotel is more than the GSA rate is required. You need to get that documentation uploaded. Sometimes it's not there. Again, not a high risk area, but our colleges get written up if internal audit doesn't do these reviews. So I lose sleep if our colleges respond to a finding because I'm not doing my job. So we continue to do that. Moving on, financial aid is always at the top of our risk assessment. It's where most of our funds come from the student side. We focused this past fiscal year on satisfactory academic progress. That's a mouthful. So they call it SAP. What it is when a student is on financial aid and they don't meet the grade threshold, they basically get it out of jail free card one time. They're put on academic probation. They have to meet certain requirements to continue to receive their financial aid. This is the feds consider this a high risk area. We reviewed a few colleges. I think the systems that we have in place prevent this from being high risk. And so I'm not going to carry it forward for 26, 27. I'm not saying if we went to every college, it would be completely clean, but again, I have to juggle limited resources with what I think are the high risk areas. And I don't think SAP meets that threshold. We went to LCTC and DIPC and Bossier Parish, I'm sorry. And everything looked good. So again, that constitutes the bulk of the work that we did. Like I mentioned, we did the advisory and consulting services. Usually these will end up in a memo. They don't, when you see I send out before these meetings, the report summary. I'm sure you're reading those thoroughly, but you won't see the memos that I issue to the colleges when we do the advisory and consulting stuff. I kind of keep that in-house. Because again, that's further upstream. That's more strategic. I don't think it warrants issuing to the public about issues that I don't consider our findings. Are there any questions about the 25, 26 year end? I know it was a whirlwind for me. I'm sure it was for you. Okay, well, I'm going to move on to the 26, 27 plan. These are items that, based on the risk assessment, which when I say risk assessment, that involves speaking to chancellors, senior management at colleges, board office personnel, stuff that we're seeing, an internal audit. Also, board members provide feedback, and I keep in touch with a member of ACUA, so the Association of College and University Auditors. So they have trends that they're seeing. So it all goes into a big pot, stir around, see what is, again, it's not just what the risk is, it's where we can have an impact, where me and my staff can, I think, have a beneficial use of our time. So again, like I said, we're bringing restricted fees and disaster recovery to the 26, 27 plan. I won't go over those again, but the 3 new projects I want to touch on. I mentioned that we weren't doing the satisfactory academic progress, but we're always going to do something related to financial aid because it's so important. We're going to do return to Title IV. Return to Title IV is when a student is on receiving federal financial aid and they leave school for whatever reason before the semester is ended. A calculation needs to take place to determine how much aid the student owes and how much money the college has to send back. When every year the feds issue their top 10 findings for federal financial aid, return to Title IV. I've been in internal audit, higher ed internal audit since 2008. Return to Title IV has always been 1 or 2. So it's a major issue. It's complicated. It deals with finding out, specific dates, calculations. It's always been, I don't say it's an issue for our schools, but it's a lot of red tape. So I think transitioning from satisfactory academic progress to return to Title IV is a beneficial use of our time. We'll ensure the calculations are correct. We'll ensure that the determination of the last date of attendance are correct. And this will be a college by college review. This won't be system wide. So hopefully as we go along, we'll be able to provide feedback to the schools that we're reviewing, colleges that we're reviewing, And also, having said that, a lot of times if we're 2 to 3 colleges in and I'm seeing the same thing, I'll try to reach out to the colleges that are next on the plan and give them a heads up saying, hey, we're seeing this. So when we're here in 6 months, if you can pay attention to these areas, we might be able to get out ahead of our review. And I've gotten feedback from the chancellor, so that's been a big benefit. So I'll continue doing that. Any questions about return to Title IV? Yeah, financial aid it's complicated. There's got to be a better way, but until they figure that out, we'll offer as much support as we can. The next project I want to talk about is, I gave it a fancy title, but I'll explain it better. It's Enrollment Integrity and Revenue Protection Review. So basically what that says is enrollment obviously affects everything: tuition, funding, state funding, federal funding, our performance measures, everything is tied to enrollment. Well, one of the issues our colleges see is increasing in their receivables and bad debt. One of the things that creates that is students who attend and either have no intention of actually carrying out their studies at the college, or life gets in the way. You're 2 weeks in and a life event happens and you have to separate from the college. Well, if the college is not doing a good job of identifying those situations, that person is going to remain a student the entire semester. They're going to have a bill that's owed to the college, and it's going to go into and chances are the college is never going to collect that. The college on the front end does a better job of identifying those students, encouraging them from the roles, then it doesn't create this issue of all this outstanding bad debt. So I've talked to our folks in IT. There's some magicians, but I think what we're going to be able to do is, this is going to be strictly a data presentation. We're going to be able to compare the drop rates at our colleges to the bad debt, a 3-year trend, to see if there's any relation between how good you're doing at removing students and your debt accumulation. I don't know the final answer, but I think it's worth our time. And I always try to do one project that's strictly data, because there's a lot of things in life and business and in my world. There's always these questions like, I think this is going on, and I'm pretty sure it is, but without the data and information, you don't know. So this will provide that answer, hopefully. Again, I think I've already done a lot before. President Nelson and I talked about this, and when we initially talked about it, I was like, I don't even know if that's possible. But I've already done a lot of legwork on the front end to now I've been convinced that we can produce the information that would lead us in at least a direction where it might not be a problem at all. It might turn out the data says, hey, the drop rate and the bad debt, there's no correlation. It's scattered all over the place. There's other factors here, but at least we'll know. We won't be able to say, I think this is going on and I think this is why. So I'm excited to get into that one again. Data, I'm a big nerd. We can do some graphs. We can get visual with it. So I think that's going to be a good use of our time. Are any questions about that particular project?
So timeline.
That's a good question. So I have 2 system-wide projects. I'm going to present the next one. I have to decide which one we're going to do first. So one will be in this calendar year and the other will be in the next. So I haven't decided yet. Again, I tend to lean for this one to be next year because I'm working with our IT folks, our data folks, and I'm kind of dependent on their timeline. So we're supposed to meet in a couple of weeks to have an update on where they are with the information. I lean to that one being, we started in January and hopefully at the April audit committee meeting, we can present something.
Is there a national matrix you can go by, or is it just something you just?
That's a good question, and I'll get into that when we get into the project, but I do not know if there's some benchmarks or if, I do know this didn't come out of thin air. We do, as a staff and myself, we do a lot of continuing professional education, and this is one of the issues that had come up before. And one of the these trainings that I was in, and then again, like I said, President Nelson and I had dabbled into this discussion, and that's when I said, "Oh, this is kind of reaching critical mass here." But I don't know. I'll have to do some research and see if there's any benchmarking in this area. I can even reach out to some colleagues to see what they're seeing, because yeah, I mean, bad debt is or receivables isn't a unique to the LCTC system. I mean, this is especially when you're dealing with, again, it all ties back to financial aid and students kind of trying to, or I say students, but really individuals trying to abuse that system. It all kind of ties into what we have here, because when you have an individual who's trying to access Title IV funds with no intention of receiving any sort of credential or going to school at all, they can create these problems where the college is not doing a good enough job of identifying those individuals and purging them. It's just that it just carries on, you know, if you would catch it on the front end. And again, I don't want to, I'm not saying that our colleges need to be turned into these fraud fighters, but I do think sometimes, and again, this is not universal, but sometimes some of our colleges do a better job of pushing out to their instructors or faculty. It's like, hey, if so-and-so hasn't been in taking the first test at this day or haven't had any interaction with them, you need to let us know so we can remove them. If the data tells us that this is an issue, that would be one of my first recommendations, because I've done financial aid reviews in the past where it's like, we can't get a good handle on when this person or relationship ended with this person. But some colleges do it well, so you can't tell me it's an impossible task to be able to identify these last dates dependents. So that would be a recommendation. If the data does indicate that there's a correlation between lack of dropping of students and the receivable balances climbing. Anything else on that one?
I think it would just be interesting to understand if, how the colleges are doing it and if there's any uniformity across the board in terms of identifying when it's appropriate
Right.
to, or how to drop a student.
Right.
And so perhaps this will yield some recommendations as well.
I agree. That's an excellent point. Again, I'm really interested in this because, like, it's one of those things where, you know, you feel or think it might be an issue is causing the receivables to climb, but maybe it's not. And again, I see some colleges do a better job of it than others, so I always can lean on, hey, these are the best in class. Let's try to repeat. And every college is unique. They have unique circumstances, and some have more resources than others, so they can kind of stay on top of these things. But you know, I think as a system, we need to sometimes do a better job of leveraging that knowledge, that institutional knowledge, for lack of a better term, and helping each other out.
Mm-hmm.
All right, if no more questions about that one, I'll go to the last new project that I'm proposing for the 26-27 plan. Again, I gave this one a fancy name, but this one's very straightforward. It's called Employee Separation Processing and Access Management Review. $1 million title, but basically what this is when an employee in the college or system office employment relationship ends, their access needs to be removed promptly, consistently, accurately, I believe this has been an issue for some of our colleges. The risk here is, the biggest risk is a disgruntled employee having access to your systems. I think that's the nightmare scenario. Is that likely? That's probably never going to happen, but I think the risk is so high, just one time happening. I mean, it could be catastrophic. You know, each situation is unique. I think another risk is, and this is more reputational, but you could, and this happens in industry, so it's not just a LCTC issue, but you have employees whose employment relationship is in it and they're still receiving a paycheck. And, you know, that can be a temptation for somebody. They're not just going to pick up the phone and call you and say, hey, you know, you paid me for the past 6 months. Things fall through the cracks, but I think the important thing with this project is, and again, this will be a system-wide, we can compare the dates that the employment relationship ended and when these accesses and last paychecks were issued, and we can find if there's any issues. One thing about this project I like, again, we have limited resources, internal audits, myself and 2 staff members. They do a great job, obviously great leadership, but but this project covers HR, IT, benefits, payroll. So I like doing projects that cover a broad, it has a large umbrella. So we can say, you know, when the legislative auditor comes to my office and says, well, you only did 6 projects this year and issued 50 reports. Yeah, well, you got to look at it a little more, it's more nuanced than that. You know, some of these projects are dealing with multiple areas at the college. And so I can say, hey, we've looked at IT, looked at payroll, looked at benefits, so on and so forth. So this is worth our time. And again, it's something that's been raised as an issue for me. So, and I do like fishing with dynamite, I don't know. But again, this is with system-wide, data-driven. We'll be able to present that information to you. Again, to your question, I probably, this one will probably start almost immediately, and this will be done for the December meeting. The enrollment integrity and revenue protection will probably be, I'll focus on that one after the calendar year. So those are the new projects we have: carrying over disaster recovery, carrying over restricted fees. We'll still do our advisory and consulting throughout the year. That takes, I've done the math. That takes about 15 to 20% of our time, along with, and I include that with ethics. I'm the ethics liaison for the system, so that involves reporting to ethics, all the training for the system. Most every college comes through me to report that. Answering ethics questions. I was the original ChatGPT when it came to ethics. Now, when I get an ethics question, they're a lot further along the line in their questioning. ChatGPT is going to take the ethics liaison title away from me, I think. But again, that takes about 15–20% of our time along with these projects. The thing that I try to juggle again is the resources that we have and the impact that we can make. This isn't a vast, you know, risk assessment with 300 things on it. So these are the projects that I think give us the most bang for our buck. They all tie into the strategic mission of the system. Our work is not about producing findings. That's not what internal audit is. Anybody who says otherwise, I'll fight. We're on the same team. We're trying to get our colleges to, again, provide the strategic mission, and we're there to provide the assurance, reduce risk, and strengthen controls. That's why we exist. That's why we're here. We're not just going to push paper around and write findings and tick boxes. If you have any questions about the 26-27 plan, any specifics about these projects, or any questions related to the department or concerns?
Sure. Question on the second one, you described the last one. It's a name. I'm glad that we're doing that, because the hackers, even if it's a disgruntled employee, the hackers are getting more sophisticated than just beyond belief. When you do that, and I know the findings will really dictate what the recommendations will be, but that will be something that will, if you, for example, you audit, you at one college and you see there may be some opportunities, but 3 others don't, it will still be something that will go across all colleges as a best practice.
Right, and the employee separation, that's gonna be a system-wide review.
Okay.
So, yeah, in general, I try to avoid too many system-wide reviews because you're dealing with 12 points of contact, 12 different timelines, and they're really hard to deliver in a timely manner, I'll say. But I think the enrollment integrity, employee separation, I think, like you said, they warrant an immediate, as much as I can on my timeline review. So every college it'll be a system-wide report, and yeah, we'll have, I try not to, we've done these in the past. The report that I issue, I can say, these are the things we're doing well, these are the things that are okay, and these are the things we need to improve on. I don't shine a light on the report and say, hey, this college is doing this poorly. I'll communicate that to them during the audit. The final report that we produce is not about trying to say, hey, this college is not doing as well as another one. We can have those discussions, but the report won't include like these are good colleges, these are bad ones. I don't think that's productive. Because with all this, goes back to advisory and consulting. If you do stuff like that, you can kind of sever that relationship with the leadership. And the best projects I've ever done here at the system are the ones when somebody picks up the phone and says, "Hey, I need your calling." That and if you write reports where you kind of put like these are good ones, these are bad ones, and someone said, you know what, forget that. I'm not going to do. I don't want to do business with them. That wasn't fair. So the final report it'll be our recommendations for the system. It won't identify individual colleges, but yes.
Okay. Chair, I'd like to note for the record that at 9:03 a.m., Audit Committee member Supervisor McConduit did join the meeting, and she's been added to the quorum to be able to vote. Motion. Thank you.
Well, I have no questions about the audit plan for fiscal year. I do have a recommendation. Staff recommends that the audit committee of the LCTC System Board of Supervisors approve the proposed audit plan for fiscal year 2026-2027 as presented by the internal audit director to be effective upon approval through June 30, 2027.
You've heard the recommendation. Can I have a motion?
Motion by Supervisor Ledet, seconded by Supervisor McConduit.
Any discussion? Opposition? Thank you, and thanks Jeff to you, even if it's a small but a very effective team.
Thank you.
Please let them know we appreciate it.
And leader.
Yeah.
All right, I'm now going to ask Joe Marin to review the legislative audit reports.
Yes, ma'am. We received our last audit for the system, so we'll receive our audit July 6th of this year for fiscal year 25 with no audit findings. So that's been a theme for most of our audits at recent time. It's kind of a let down when you get a board member. We try to keep you updated, but there's nothing really to update except that there's no findings. So that's good news. With that said, schools are closing out their fiscal year 26 books this year, preparing their financial reports. They'll have them submitted to us in the next few weeks. And with that said, once that starts, we start again a completely new audit cycle with the auditors, looking at all our books. And so going forward throughout the year, you will be getting updates as audits are issued by them. And hopefully we'll have, again, no audit findings as we have had in the past.
Thank you. Any questions for Joe? All right, any other business?
No, ma'am.
All right. Hearing there's no other business, I would request a motion to adjourn.
Oh, public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Any
okay.
public comment?
We do not have any public comment at this time.
Thanks.
Okay. Motion by Supervisor Hall, seconded by Supervisor Ledet.
Thank you so much.
We can find them.